We've got a great group. Thanks all for being here. I think these are all household names, but the amazing thing is at the point that all these companies, Yelp, Groupon, Pandora, and Zillow, adopted mobile, they were private companies. They were startups, with a not very kind of clear future. So they were, you may think of them as like big public tech companies collectively valued at billions of dollars, but it was very different when you embraced mobile. Chris, Pandora has this long kind of history of struggle and fight, and I'm wondering, what was it like when you saw the mobile opportunity, and what did you feel like it could do for the company?
Pandora always knew, so we launched our website in August 29th, 2005, and we always knew that ubiquity would be a big part of the story. So getting wherever listeners were and bringing a really simple interface to wherever those listeners were was an important part of our play. And so late 06, we began, after acknowledging the growth and working on the growth and scale through that 05 and 06, we started working with companies like Sonos and carriers like Sprint and AT&T to get Pandora onto flip phones and in the living room. And so we always knew that would be a big part of the story, but I don't think we really anticipated that it would be such a huge portion of our listening as it is today. But that early development helped us a lot and gave us a lot of insight into what it would be like in that space.
And I mean, if you were starting today, would you define yourself? We talked a lot about mobile first or mobile only companies. Jeremy, if you were starting Zillow today, would it be a mobile first company?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, I think Zillow is a mobile company now, right? More than half of our usage as of last year comes from mobile devices. And if we were starting from scratch today, we would be mobile first. I mean, I don't think we'd ignore the desktop web. That's still a healthy part of our business. But I think the collection of us all have benefited from the shift towards mobile. And if we didn't start in 2006, we probably would have started on mobile.
And Mike, Yelp kind of has this history. I remember using m.yelp.com back in the day. I was looking up. Anyone here have a Trio back in the day? Come on, raise your hand. It's not shameful. Admit it.
Yeah, not now.
Did you know that there was actually a Yelp app for the old Palm OS? It's a true fact. But so it's not like you were oblivious to mobile. But what was different about the iPhone opportunity?
I think the iPhone was a real game changer for us and all mobile app developers. We always had a hunch that mobile was going to be critical to local, but I don't think we fully realized the magnitude of what it would be. I mean, if you look now, 50% of all searches on Yelp are on a mobile device. 50% of all photos uploaded to Yelp are on a mobile device. Mobile is experiencing explosive growth for us, and part of it is when someone's looking for a location, like a restaurant, many people think about us for, which that's only 21% of the reviewed business on Yelp. Also, the whole other 79% of businesses like retail and shopping, maybe you're looking for an auto mechanic, a gas station, a hotel, anything. When you're moving around, you're out there in the field and you've got this mobile computer in your hands, that's the real opportunity. Google has a statistic now that 40% of all searches they're seeing on mobile devices appear to have local intent. And that's an amazing number if you think about it. That's up from 20% not too long ago. This means that we're coming up on half the time someone uses a mobile device for anything, they're looking for local. So for us, it's clearly wedded to our business model. And I think what the iPhone allows you to do is they took such a leap forward in the experience that users were really able to engage on a level before. And m.yelp.com of old that you were talking about, you couldn't do content contribution. That was too complicated, right? It was kind of read only.
You can write a review.
Yeah, you can do any of the. Now you can check in. You can do mobile contributions and tips and put in text that way. You can submit photos. You can bookmark. You can share with friends. It's such a rich experience. You can see the feed and explore what's around you. And I think first with the iPhone that made it all possible, and obviously the Android platform makes that possible as well.
I don't think it's a coincidence that 3 of the 4 companies up here are local. Local is a strong part of our business, right? And so when you combine mobile and that location context, all of our businesses get better, right? I mean, we talked about how when we first launched our iPhone app, in 2009, that's when we kind of got the aha that wow, this is just a better Zillow. It's not I'm at work and I'm checking on listings. It's I'm walking down the street and I actually want to know more about that house. And so I think when you can add location to that context, it's even more obvious.
Yeah, mobile allows us to follow our users in the world. It's not like the iPhone invented a whole bunch, people didn't start going out of their houses because they got iPhones.
Do you remember those old Sprint commercials where, like, they introduced the wireless web for the first time, and it was like, you are now free to leave your house. I mean, it took us a while, but thank goodness for the mobile industry for allowing us to do that.
Yeah,
Arguably, we're all somewhat local in that our advertising business is heavily based on local.
I was noticing some like car dealer ads on Pandora the other day.
Soon mattresses.
I mean, David, with Groupon, I remember when Groupon first launched its mobile offering, it was strongly branded as Groupon Now. It was the time element immediately, like, this is a way for you to get a deal that you're going to use right away. What happened there? Because I don't see the Now in the app as strongly.
Yeah, the Now is still there. I mean, what's happened to Groupon? I mean, if you think of it, these guys are talking about, we did something in 2006.
Yeah.
Groupon wasn't the glimmer in Andrew Mason's eye in 2006. We've grown and changed in a remarkably short time. We started out as basically a way to get one deal a day over email. And what we've turned into is like this fairly comprehensive local commerce experience that allows you to kind of do the now thing. And Groupon Now is fundamentally about kind of these urgent yield management deals that where you get big discounts and you help merchants kind of liquidate last minute inventory. But what we found is our users are wandering the world. They want to do the kind of now deals. They want to do conventional Groupon deals. And the challenge for us in creating our app was less about kind of do this one thing on mobile and much more about giving our users the entire Groupon experience, the entire range of stuff that they can do in a really easy, instantly consumable way.
But to Jeremy and Chris's point, location is actually a surprisingly important element.
Yeah, location is a super important element, but location means a lot of things. Location doesn't just mean where you physically are. Location also means where you spend your time. Understanding, there's a great statistic I read, BBDO and AOL did a report. They said 68% of mobile consumption time is spent in the home. So, location is definitely about helping you navigate in the world, but it's also about understanding where you spend your time, and particularly for Groupon, where we're helping people kind of plan their activities, where I'm going to go for dinner, what I'm going to do on the weekend. We need to be location aware in a much more comprehensive way.
So location turned out to be much more important than maybe you initially thought.
Oh yeah, I mean, it turned out to be more important, and it's an interesting contrast with Yelp. Yelp to me is very much about task completion, solving a problem, answering a question. Groupon is more of how am I going to explore the world? What am I going to do this weekend? What are me and my wife going to, my wife and I, God, we never go out anymore. What are we going to do on Sunday? Yeah. It's a different interaction, and they're complementary in many ways.
So what other surprises, you're all pioneers here and you encounter the unexpected. Chris, what kind of surprises did you have along the way? You were convinced that users were going to do X and they did Y instead.
I think to David's point, one really interesting thing for us is that how much listening is happening in the home on mobile devices. We didn't anticipate that, but we can see from our analytical data about where the listening is happening on Wi-Fi through ISPs that there's still a huge opportunity for us to be in the, we have this joke about this refrigerator that Pandora's integrated with, but really like the getting into the kitchen and the bathroom and the living room, more into the living room is still surprising for us. I mean, really, I bet all of us would agree that iOS was a huge game changer in its introduction in iOS 2 in the App Store. I'd say that's the single biggest surprise for us so far.
It's funny how the surprises are always obvious in hindsight, right? Like that one seems obvious in hindsight. One for our business was we expected, so our native advertising unit is a contact form. You can either call or email an agent. And we expected when we brought that to the phone, well, click to call was, the panacea of mobile, and it would just be all calls. It's not. Most people actually still email the agent. And I think it's because people want to do things on their terms, and a call is a two-way conversation right now. And you look back and you're like, well, that's obvious. I don't call actually on my phone. I just use it as an internet device. But 3 or 4 years ago, how would we see that coming?
But they increasingly do this like when they're out in a neighborhood hunting for a home. So they kind of do it when they have the inspiration,
Right.
but they're not.
But still on their terms.
Yeah,
right?
they're not calling the agent. They're emailing.
I'll put out something contrarian, though. We're talking about mobile, and mobile has truly been game-changing and is where a lot of the growth is. But, a warning is don't ignore the desktop web. So you read a lot of things like the desktop web is dead. I think the desktop web is still extremely important. If you look at Yelp, the bottom line is people are going to be able to craft more thoughtful, like if someone's going to contribute something very thoughtful, they're going to be in a better format to do that in desktop web. A lot of research, like you were talking about, what am I going to do with my wife? Some of that research happens on the phone, but a lot of that kind of research actually happens when you're sitting at a desk. And the Business Insider actually published a deck that I think was great on this, that, hey, until people stop working 8 or more hours a day in an office with a computer in front of them, the desktop web isn't going anywhere. And that's actually an important part of your waking day.
Funny thing is I see a lot of desktops.
I was going to say
Yeah.
that I think the lesson for is don't ignore any one platform.
Yeah.
A big theme at CES this year was the second screen, and there are huge opportunities for all of us in that realm, whether somebody's watching the Travel Channel and what Groupons they could bring, or Bay Area Backroads for that matter.
Yeah.
And House Hunters. So there's huge opportunity for that. So any one platform could be bring a significant amount of growth.
Mike made a really good point that shouldn't be understated. The mobile device world has actually made desktop web a little bit more interesting again. Our fastest growing browser is the iPad browser, right? And so that made us rethink about Zillow Desktop. And if you actually look at Zillow Desktop now versus 2 years ago, it looks just like our iPad app. It's much more touch-friendly. It's a consistent experience with our iPad. And so we took a native app experience and we said, well, this is still, a huge platform for us. How can we make it better? And how can we deal with the fact that more and more of these devices will be touch-enabled? So it actually, mobile provides innovation back to that main platform as well.
But the challenge, so, this is the big question. You can't ignore any platform, but you have to choose. At the end of the day, we each only get so many bullets. And if you're doing product management and doing mock-ups for like 10 different platforms, at the end of the day, you've got to pick 1, 2, maybe 3 that are the focus. And then everything else is going to be kind of a Me Too experience, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. But look, there's a big difference between 3 and 10.
Yeah.
And it's funny. If we were doing this a couple of years ago, you would be asking us. It's like, is mobile going to cannibalize the desktop web? Are we just like trading?
Yeah.
That was like the standard question. I know in our business, our mobile users spend. People who buy on mobile on Groupon spend 50% more in total. What we're seing is, you've got to engage in all these platforms.
And are they redeeming Groupons like on the spot, or what are they buying?
So, for the most part, they're buying the same stuff that they're buying on the desktop. We also know that a lot of our users kind of interact across platforms. It's an entirely reasonable behavior to kind of see something on the desktop and think about it, and then remember and go buy it on mobile. People are, there's another great stat I saw. People check their, a quarter of people check their mobile device more than every 30 minutes. We're dealing with users who are, yeah, exactly.
My iPhone bricked yesterday, and
He was freaking out.
Yeah, you're probably,
I'm just beyond. I don't know how I'm functioning.
yeah, you're going to need anti-anxiety meds, right?
Yeah.
We're dealing with fast twitch users who are engaging on multiple platforms. And the reason why you want to be on multiple platforms isn't because users are going from that device to this device. It's because they're now living their lives across the platforms.
Yeah, and I think David makes a really good point. Mobile gives you the opportunity to think about how to, you get new use cases because people are using Groupon in a way they weren't before. Like our example, you couldn't use Zillow next to the house before you had a device to take with you, and now that's a new use case. But it's also just increasing time spent, right? Mm-hmm. So you might have only used Yelp or Zillow at work or at home, and now you can use it on the weekends. So you get more engagement and you get more types of engagement, and that creates these opportunities to think about people multi-platform. I mean, we're now thinking about, okay, you're probably using us on your MacBook and on your iPhone and on your tablet, and how do we provide value knowing that you're showing up 3 different places?
It's interesting. Foursquare, Path, Square, Instagram. These are 4 companies that pretty much define mobile first, mobile only. They've all started emphasizing their desktop websites more. With Foursquare, it's profile. Square, it's a directory of merchants. Instagram has this, you know, stream of photos now on the web. So do you feel like the kind of mobile first companies are learning that multi-platform lesson that you kind of got earlier on?
Well, I'll say something controversial there.
Yeah.
I think if you look at this panel and then the ones you mentioned, which some of those are doing better on mobile than others on that list, but maybe there's one or two exceptions. Almost none of those companies are doing really well on the web. They've got challenges. So it's interesting that mobile first was the mantra for a while, and I think mobile first is actually important. If I was doing a new startup right now, I would definitely think mobile as a key part of my strategy. But the mobile first companies are kind of now playing catch up and having a hard time on the desktop web, where the companies that nailed desktop web and mobile either simultaneously or desktop web first seem to be doing a great job on both platforms.
So if you had it to do all over again, what would you do differently? Wind the clock back. Was there, you know, do you look back and think that you didn't go fast enough into mobile, or you were a little too tentative or skeptical?
I mean, I'll take that bait.
Sure.
I don't know if anyone would say they didn't move fast enough. We always wish we had done things faster. I mean, building on what David talked about a few minutes ago, we wish we had seen the new experiences you would get from using a Zillow or a Groupon on 4 or 5 platforms all at once earlier, because there's a lot you can build that is, you know, really helpful to your user and to yourself to do that. You know, so we took Zillow to the cloud. We started making, you know, sticky things like understanding if you've looked at homes before across devices, and I wish we'd done that earlier. You know, we spent a lot of time getting Zillow onto all those devices, and then we looked at all that usage behavior like you guys did and said, whoa, these people are doing things differently, and I wish we'd done that sooner.
So really, you mean looking at the user behavior? And
Yeah,
reacting to it.
embracing the multi-device user behavior that mobile created.
Yeah, I guess what I mean, to answer your question, no, we did everything perfectly. You know, I think it really does go to the comprehensiveness of the experience, recognizing that, you know, mobile wasn't this kind of ancillary experience that, you know, was going to be thin and an add-on, but that it needed to deliver the full range. One of the things we were talking about earlier was Groupon goods. We talk a lot about location, but we have this business called Groupon Goods, which is a product business. You get great deals on mattresses. And Groupon Goods does great on mobile.
Which is weird. I mean, for an old timer, you know, like me, you say m-commerce, and I just kind of reflexively scoff.
Yeah.
Because it was so overhyped and so bad in the late '90s, early part of last decade.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there was no platform, right? You guys now have a platform to make that frictionless.
We have a frictionless. There are two elements to this. One is frictionless, and because we have credit cards in most cases, it's frictionless. And the other is, these are entertainment devices. You know, go into iTunes and look at the top apps, and it's filled with, you know, casual games and ways to kill time. And shopping for stuff, m-commerce, particularly, you know, kind of fun, serendipitous m-commerce, is a great way to kill 5 minutes. And that's very much what people are doing with mobile devices. So to your point about how everything that's an aha is obvious in hindsight, of course it's fun to buy stuff on your phone.
Well,
So
I
really
would say
interesting-
one.
go ahead.
I just want to interject one lesson. So we've done, just to touch on an earlier point. So we just announced CES. We're on over 1,000 CE devices. We've done that with less than 5 engineers, and that includes
Wow.
our automotive implementations. And basically because we created this thing that consumers really want in an entertainment platform, and the partners do the development. But that said, I think that one thing that looking back on the last 8+ years, is we did a website redesign last year, which was really received really well by our users and really bumped listening there and engagement there. And then we just went through this process of redesigning our mobile apps. And I think that we really have to get on a much tighter cycle of attending to those sorts of things as the platforms change, as the new desserts come out on Android. You know, there's all sorts of new things to take advantage of. And so one big lesson for us is really get on a good cycle of updating the user experience and bringing more to our users.
So on that note, in 2008, it was pretty much an iPhone world. That was the choice. How do you feel about iOS versus Android now?
I think you've got to look at both. I think both are huge platforms. I think the statistics are out there that iOS users spend more, they generate more revenue, they're more engaged. So on many levels, the iOS user is still a very critical user that you've got to understand. I think that's why you see most Silicon Valley startups going for the iOS platform first, and then, but we do everything co-developed on Android as well. But I think iOS still has a very strong position, even though Android's got a lot of growth.
They're very different platforms. They're different to develop on. They're different sets of developers. They're different interfaces. As much as we've tried to really unify them, they're different user bases and different market, I think, totally. It probably explains a lot of the different usage as well. But so they're both super important, and I'm sure some other one will emerge soon that we'll want to watch too.
I agree. I'll add one nuance to that. I think it's iPhone, iPad, Android.
Yeah.
I mean, we think about our primary platforms as iPhone and Android phone, and then tablet, but tablet is being defined by iPad right now. Yeah. And I think those are the three, when you talk about three.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one thing I'd add to that is that, I think the Android environment is, it's much more diverse and it's changing more rapidly. We look at our Android user base, and there are definitely a cohort of Android users on high-end phones, the S3s and what have you, that, behave a lot more like iOS users. And I think that it's hard to look at Android users in aggregate. You've got folks on high-end devices who really behave like iOS users, and you've got folks who are using the Android phone that they were given when they walked into the AT&T store not knowing what to buy. I think that you're going to see, both platforms are hugely important, and I think that you're going to see the Android user base mature and become more iOS-like in the coming year.
I think that iPad iPhone distinction thing, that's a really good point. So we actually didn't launch an iPad app with the launch of the iPad and in the early days of the iPad, because we said, hey, to your point, you can just use a website on the iPad. It's a big enough screen, and we don't want to just take our iPhone app and stretch its size. We've got 33 million reviews, we've got all these photos. If we're going to do something on an iPad, we're going to do something interesting. And so when we, much later, eventually came out with an iPad app, it was an amazing experience after we understood how iPad users actually behave. And there was a great photo browsing experience. It was totally, you could do more contribution. It was a totally different experience. And users loved it. We became a top 5 iPad app of all time, I think, when Apple put the numbers out.
It's funny, we got to that same conclusion reverse. I mean, we chose to bet on it at launch, and we weren't sure. Actually, there was a lot of debate internally, like, I don't know, what's this thing going to do?
Yeah.
But we took it as a kind of a project to let's reinvent the experience, what can we come up with different? And that ended up bearing out a new UX we're now using, and it ended up bearing out a photo browse first experience, but it was a bit of a gamble.
Photo browse ends up being a big iPad. Yeah,
but
now, you have the real estate.
Yeah, but now, the users have come so quickly that no matter when you got on, I think it's obvious that that's a major platform.
Yeah.
It is funny how these platforms, like to your point, any urge to try to develop once across all 3 platforms gets defeated very quickly. Even iPhone and Android, where, boy, they're both smartphones. If you don't live in the kind of the native UI and really adopt the flow of the device, every time we've tried to kind of port our iOS user experience onto Android, it's dumb. It's not an Android experience. You have to live in the OS.
Yeah, even like little basic nuances like the existence of a back button.
Yeah.
Or where it's typically placed. That's so much a part of the navigation, and if you can't really replicate that across devices.
Yeah, if you live on one of these devices, you just develop intuition about how they work. And
was that kind of an efficiency move, or?
Oh yeah, I think from the point of view of design, actually design more than anything else, but development as well. You really want to kind of, I think we'd all love to be able to build one app across platforms, not have to think about it again for Android, but it's the wrong user experience.
So Windows Phone, is that coming up on your radar?
It is for us.
It is?
We'll be launching an app this sometime in the first half of this year.
And that's, for Pandora, it's a ubiquity play, right?
Yeah.
Like you just don't want to not be on a platform.
Yeah. And we can afford to do it.
That's
right now.
Actually, Pandora is there was this list of 25 top grossing apps. These are apps that monetize directly, either through sale or in-app revenue. And Pandora was the lone non-game app in that list of 25.
Yeah. I was looking at it a couple days ago, we were in the 2 spot. It's day to day, hour to hour, it changes drastically. We can be in like the 8th or 9th or the 2 yesterday or 2 days ago. We were in the 2nd spot. There are, now I can't remember. There are now 2 other non-game apps in the top 25. But yeah, we're pretty much.
Any surprises about how you monetized in mobile? Did you have a kind of thesis that got disproven, or did you make a lucky bet that worked out?
Yeah. I mean, I think Yelp and Zillow are really similar, at least, and Groupon to some degree. We're very fortunate in that our business model sort of was naturally accelerated by mobile. I mean, we're basically a contact between a consumer and an agent, and when you have the location context and you have the additional devices, it just does better, right? So, I mean, our users actually contact agents 3 times more often on these devices. And so when we saw that in 2009, it was kind of like, okay, here we go. So, I mean, there's no huge aha there, but it helps that we built an ad unit that is native to the experience, so that when the screen size became an issue, the ad was seen as value additive to the user as opposed to interruptive.
The in-app purchasing has been a surprise for us. People are much more willing to lay down their iTunes password, their Google Play password, than they are 16 digits, a date, and a CVV. So that's pretty interesting for people to think about, because you're going to see a lot more success monetizing through despite the fees on the mobile platform.
Do you guys store credit cards?
No.
All right, I think we have some time for audience questions. I see one over there. Do we have microphones?
Just yell it out.
Or just holler it out and I can repeat. Oh, here we go.
Hi, James Cahal from Toon Goggles. We're a video-on-demand platform for children. This is more of a question targeted to Chris, but maybe some others can respond. We've tried to follow sort of your guys' lead in a lot of ways with the ubiquity of trying to get on any device possible. And you touched on this a second ago a little bit, but we've noticed how Pandora went with the in-app purchase route, and then Netflix is always stuck with the purchasing outside of the App Store interface route. And I was curious as to why you guys chose one way or the other, because when you're trying to be a platform that's on TVs and phones and computers and everything, it's a huge portion of your monetization that can be taken away, that can be avoided. And we're going through that phase now. I was just wondering if all of you could speak to that a little bit.
We didn't make a choice. The choice was made for us, but it's a mystery. Why Netflix? I think they must have a special agreement. But if you're going to collect money on an iOS platform, you're going to go do it in app.
I think they don't collect money on iOS. You basically have to subscribe outside the app.
Yeah,
and then use your subscription.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of like if you let people use their iTunes credentials to buy, then you pay the tax.
Yeah, I think Netflix has a special agreement.
Okay, interesting.
I don't know.
And for Groupon, you don't run into that issue because you have kind of your own wallet relationship.
Yeah,
right?
we have our own we have our own wallet relationship. I think like everyone who does commerce, getting users to enter the credit card information, getting users to log in. That's I think a challenge for every commerce play. But yeah, we don't do the transactions through ourselves.
And I think for Yelp and Zillow, you generally have a relationship with your advertisers. Right. That's direct and not platform tax. Unfortunately, we just have the time for the one question. Hopefully, our panelists can stick around to the conference and feel free to buttonhole them. Thank you all for your time, panelists. Thank you very much for the great conversation.